The war had been going on for 3 long years. Earth soldiers fought against the alien empire called Zephyria across distant planets and moons. Nobody thought it would end like this, not with victory or defeat, but with something much bigger. Threatening them all. Captain David Chen stood in the massive crystal hall of Harmony Station, a neutral space base floating between both worlds. He was tired, so very tired. His uniform still bore the marks of countless battles, and his eyes held the weight of decisions that had saved thousands of lives but cost thousands more. At just 32, he looked much older. The war had stopped suddenly when scientists from both sides discovered something terrifying. A cosmic storm was heading straight for their corner of the galaxy. It wasn't just any storm. This thing could destroy entire solar systems. Both humans and Zephyrians realized they needed to work together or face total extinction. But the aliens had old traditions, very old ones. Since Captain David had been the one to deliver the final blow that forced the peace talks. Their ancient law said he could claim a prize, not treasure or land, but one of their royal prisoners. It was supposed to show mercy and honor, they said. David didn't want any prize. He just wanted to go home to his little apartment on Earth and forget about war. But refusing would be seen as an insult, and they couldn't afford to anger the aliens now. So here he stood, looking at 7 alien princesses lined up before him like he was shopping for groceries. The Zephyrians looked almost human, but not quite. Their skin had a slight shimmer to it, and their eyes were larger than human eyes. Some had hair that seemed to move on its own, while others had markings on their faces that glowed softly in the dim light. Everyone expected him to choose Princess Luna from House Starfire. She was breathtakingly beautiful, with golden skin that literally sparkled and hair that flowed like liquid silver. More importantly, she was powerful. Her family controlled 3 star systems and had the biggest military fleet after the royal family. Choosing her would mean getting access to trade routes, military bases, and political influence that could help humanity for generations. The other human officers were practically nudging him toward her. Admiral Rodriguez kept whispering about strategic advantages and peace treaties. Even the Zephyrian nobles seemed to expect this choice. Luna stood proud and confident, clearly used to being the center of attention. But David's eyes kept drifting. To the far end of the line, there stood the smallest princess, barely reaching his shoulder. Princess Kira from House Whisper looked like she wanted to disappear into the crystal walls. Her skin was pale silver, almost see-through, and dark lines ran under it like cracks in ice. The other princesses wore elaborate gowns that seemed to be made of starlight itself. But Kira's simple gray dress made her look more like a servant than royalty. House Whisper was nobody special. They owned one small mining colony on the edge of Zephyrian space. No military power, no great wealth, no political influence. Choosing her would give humanity exactly nothing in terms of strategic advantage. Even her own family seemed embarrassed by her presence. The Zephyrian Emperor kept glancing at her with what looked like disappointment. David had done his homework. He knew all about these princesses before walking into this hall. Princess Luna could offer trade agreements worth billions. Princess Vera from House Lightning controlled the fastest ships in their fleet. Princess Nara from House Crystal had connections to every major family in the Empire. And then there was Kira, who officially brought nothing to the table. The hall was completely silent. Hundreds of eyes watched him, human officers expecting him to make the smart political choice. Zephyrian nobles curious to see what the famous human captain would do. News reporters from both species had their cameras ready to broadcast this moment across the galaxy. David took a step forward, then another. The crowd held its breath as he walked past Princess Luna, who raised an eyebrow in surprise. He walked past Princess Vera, who looked confused. He kept walking until he reached the end of the line. Princess Kira was staring at the floor, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She seemed to be trying to make herself as small as possible. When David's boots appeared in her field of vision, she looked up with the most beautiful violet eyes he had ever seen. They were filled with confusion and something that looked like fear. David did something that shocked everyone in the room. He knelt down on one knee in front of the smallest, weakest princess in the lineup. "I choose Princess Kira of House Whisper," he said in a clear, strong voice that carried across the entire hall. The silence that followed was deafening. Then everyone started talking at once. Human officers were whispering frantically to each other. Zephyrian nobles looked like they couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. Even the news reporters seemed stunned. Princess Luna's mouth fell open. She had clearly never been rejected for anything in her entire life. The other princesses looked equally shocked. Some even offended that they had been passed over for the weakest member of their group. But the most surprised person in the room was Kira herself. She stared at David with wide eyes, her pale hands trembling slightly. "Me," she whispered, so quietly that only he could hear her. The Zephyrian Emperor stepped forward, his expression a mixture of confusion and concern. He was a tall, imposing figure with deep blue skin and eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries. "Captain Chen," he said formally, "surely there has been some mistake. This princess offers no strategic value to your people. Her house controls only a small mining operation. She has no military assets, no vast wealth, no political connections that could benefit Earth." Admiral Rodriguez rushed forward, clearly panicking. "Captain," he hissed under his breath, "what are you doing? This makes no sense. Choose Princess Luna. Think about Earth's future." David stood up, but kept his eyes on Kira. She was still staring at him like she couldn't process what was happening. In her violet eyes, he saw something that reminded him why he had become a soldier in the first place. Not for glory or power, but to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. "My choice is made," David said firmly, turning to face the Emperor. He didn't explain his reasoning. He couldn't, not yet. The real reason would have to remain his secret for now. The Emperor studied David's face for a long moment, clearly trying to understand what game the human was playing. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Very well. By the ancient laws of our people, Princess Kira of House Whisper is now under your protection and guidance. May this choice bring wisdom to both our peoples." As the formal ceremony concluded and the crowd began to disperse, David noticed something interesting. While everyone else looked confused or disappointed by his choice, Princess Kira herself had stopped trembling. For just a moment, when she thought no one was looking, he saw her violet eyes flash with something that definitely wasn't weakness. Maybe his choice wasn't as foolish as everyone thought. 2 days had passed since David's shocking choice, and the rumors were flying everywhere. The other human officers avoided him in the hallways, whispering behind his back about his terrible decision. Some called him foolish, others wondered if the war had finally broken his mind. Admiral Rodriguez had even suggested sending him back to Earth for psychological evaluation. But David didn't care about the gossip. He had bigger things on his mind, the living quarters they gave him and Princess Kira were actually quite nice, 2 separate bedrooms connected by a common area, with large windows showing the stars outside. It was meant for diplomatic guests, not prisoners, which showed that the Zephyrians were at least trying to honor the peace treaty. Kira spent most of her time sitting by those windows, staring out at space like she was searching for something. She barely spoke, just nodded politely when David tried to make conversation. During meals, she ate very little and kept her eyes down. It was like living with a ghost. David began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe he should have chosen Princess Luna and secured Earth's future instead of following his gut feeling about this strange, quiet girl. But on the 3rd night, everything changed. David woke up to a soft humming sound coming from the main room. He checked his watch, 3 in the morning. Quietly, he opened his door and peeked out. What he saw made his blood run cold. Kira was standing near the window, but she wasn't alone. Well, not exactly. The room's computer screens were all glowing, showing streams of data that moved too fast for human eyes to follow. The lights were flickering in a strange pattern, and the air itself seemed to shimmer around her. But the most shocking thing was Kira herself. Those dark lines under her pale skin weren't just markings, they were pulsing with soft light. like electrical circuits running through her body. Her eyes were closed, and her hands moved in small gestures, as if she was conducting an invisible orchestra. David realized she was somehow connected to the station's computer systems. Not using a keyboard or touch screen, she was interfacing with the technology directly through her mind. He must have made a sound, because Kira's eyes snapped open. The moment she saw him, everything went dark. The screen shut off, the lights stopped flickering, and those glowing lines under her skin faded away. She stumbled backward, her face filled with terror. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Please don't tell them. They'll destroy me if they know." David stepped into the room slowly, his hands visible to show he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you, but I need to understand what just happened." Kira sank into a chair, her whole body trembling. For a long moment, she just stared at him, clearly trying to decide if she could trust him. Finally, she took a deep breath. "I'm not like the other princesses," she said quietly. "I'm what my people call a resonant. We can connect directly with electronic systems, feel electromagnetic fields, even send ships and communications across vast distances. But we're not supposed to exist anymore." David sat down across from her, careful to keep his distance so she wouldn't feel trapped. "What do you mean?" 50 years ago, there were thousands of us," Kira continued, her voice getting stronger as she spoke. "We helped design the greatest ships, created the most advanced communication networks, even guided rescue missions during natural disasters. But then the leaders became afraid of our power. They worried we might take control of their fleets or spy on their private conversations." She paused, touching one of the dark lines on her arm. "So they hunted us down. Most resonants were eliminated. The few survivors went into hiding, pretending to be normal Zephyrians. I'm the last one anyone knows about, and even my own family thinks I'm just defective." David felt a chill run down his spine. "Your family doesn't know what you really are. The Emperor knows, and a few others in the government. But they made my parents believe I was born with genetic flaws that make me weak and useless. It was the only way to keep me safe. Better to be seen as worthless than as a threat." Suddenly, David's choice made perfect sense to everyone except himself. He had known there was something special about Kira, but he hadn't realized just how dangerous her secret was. 2 years ago, David said slowly, "I was on a covert mission behind enemy lines. There was a civilian transport ship caught in a battle zone, full of families trying to escape. Someone guided our rescue ships through the chaos, helping us save over 300 people. The navigation was impossible. No human or normal Zephyrian could have calculated those routes. Through all that interference," Kira's eyes widened. "That was you? You were one of the rescue pilots. You saved those people." David said, "You risked exposing yourself to help civilians from both sides escape a war zone. I never knew who had helped us, but I never forgot what they did." Tears began to fall down Kira's cheeks. "I couldn't just let them die. I don't care what species they were. They were families with children. I had to help." David leaned forward. "That's why I chose you. Not because of any strategic advantage or political gain. I chose you because in the middle of a war, when everyone else was focused on destroying each other, you chose to save lives. You showed me that there was still hope for peace between our peoples." For the first time since he had met her, Kira smiled. It was small and uncertain, but it was real. "But there's something else," she said, her expression growing serious again. "When I connected to the station systems just now, I sensed something troubling. There are encrypted communications going back and forth between certain officials, from both our governments, secret meetings, hidden plans. I think some people don't want this peace to last." David's military instincts kicked in immediately. "What kind of plans?" "I couldn't decode all of it without risking detection, but I saw references to the cosmic storm, weapon shipments, and something about after the crisis passes. Someone is planning to restart the war once the immediate threat is over." The room fell silent as they both realized what this meant. The peace treaty wasn't just fragile, it was being actively undermined by people who had their own reasons for wanting the conflict to continue. We need more information, David said. But if you use your abilities too much, they'll detect you. No, Kira said. But if we don't find out what they're planning, this peace won't last long enough for the cosmic storm to be our biggest problem. David looked at this small, seemingly fragile princess who had just revealed herself to be one of the most powerful beings in known space. She could have used her abilities to escape, to hide, to save only herself. Instead, she was willing to risk everything to protect the peace that both their peoples desperately needed. Then we'll figure it out together, he said. But carefully, very carefully. As they began to plan their next move, David realized that his choice hadn't been foolish at all. He had chosen the one person who might be able to save both civilizations. The only question was whether they could uncover the conspiracy before it destroyed everything they were trying to protect. Outside the window, the stars continued their eternal dance, unaware of the small drama playing out in the space station below. But somewhere in those lights, a cosmic storm was still approaching, and time was running out for everyone. The next few days passed like a dangerous dance. David and Kira had to act completely normal while secretly investigating the conspiracy. They had discovered it wasn't easy. Every time they passed other officers in the hallway, David wondered if they were looking at enemies or allies. Kira was getting stronger. That's what worried David the most. Her abilities seemed to be growing more powerful each day, as if being around someone who accepted her true nature was allowing her to stop hiding. Sometimes he would catch her staring at a wall, and he knew she was sensing the electronic signals running through the station's systems like blood through veins. I can feel everything, she told him one evening as they sat in their quarters. Every computer, every communication device, every security camera. It's like having 1,000 extra senses all at once. Is it painful? David asked, genuinely concerned. The dark lines under her skin seemed more visible now, pulsing gently with soft light. Not painful exactly, more like overwhelming. Imagine trying to listen to 100 conversations at the same time, while also watching 50 different video screens. Most residents learn to filter it out, but I never had proper training. I had to figure it out on my own. That night, while David was reviewing security reports on his personal tablet, Kira suddenly went rigid in her chair. Her eyes went wide, and the lights in the room began to flicker. Kira, what is it? David asked, immediately alert. Someone's trying to hack into the station's communication array, she whispered. They're using a very sophisticated program, but they're not good enough to hide from me. Without thinking, Kira reached out with her mind and interfaced with the station's network. David watched as her pupils dilated and those glowing lines under her skin became brighter. For several minutes, she sat perfectly still, her consciousness exploring the digital world around them. When she finally came back to herself, her face was pale with fear. We're in trouble, she said. Big trouble. I traced the hack back to its source. It's coming from Admiral Rodriguez's personal quarters. David felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. Rodriguez was his superior officer, a man he had served under for 3 years. Are you sure? Positive. But that's not the worst part. I managed to intercept some of the data he was transmitting. David. He's been in communication with Princess Luna and several high-ranking Zephyrian officials. They're planning to sabotage the peace treaty. Kira pulled up a holographic display using the room's entertainment system, her abilities allowing her to bypass all the normal security protocols. The information she showed him made David's blood run cold. Look at this, she said, pointing to a series of encrypted messages. They're planning to stage an attack that will look like it came from the other side. Once the cosmic storm passes and both our civilizations are weakened, they'll use the chaos to seize power. David studied the evidence, his military training, helping him understand the strategic implications. They're not just planning to restart the war. They want to control both sides of it. Exactly. Rodriguez wants to become the supreme commander of all human forces, while Princess Luna plans to overthrow her own father and take the throne. Together, they would rule both civilizations. The worst part was how clever the plan was. During the cosmic storm, communication between different parts of both empires would be nearly impossible. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it would be too late. The conspirators would already be in control of the key military assets. We have to warn someone, David said. But who can we trust? That question became even more urgent the next morning. David was walking to the cafeteria when Lieutenant Jake Morrison, one of his most trusted friends, approached him with a strange expression. "Hey, Captain," Jake said, but his voice sounded forced. "Admiral Rodriguez wants to see you in his office." Right away, something in Jake's tone made David suspicious. Did he say what it was about? Just that it's urgent, he seemed. Concerned about your choice of princess. Maybe he wants to discuss reassignment options. David nodded and thanked Jake, but as he walked away, he noticed something troubling. Jake kept glancing back at him, and there was definitely something guilty in his expression. When David turned the corner and quickly looked back, he saw Jake speaking into a communication device. His heart sank. If Jake was part of the conspiracy, how many other people he trusted were involved? Instead of going to Rodriguez's office, David hurried back to his quarters. He found Kira practicing her abilities, levitating small objects using electromagnetic fields. "We need to leave," he said urgently. "Now, what happened?" "I think they know we're onto them. Rodriguez called me to his office, but something felt wrong about the whole thing." Kira immediately began reaching out with her senses, scanning the station's security systems. What she found confirmed their worst fears. There are armed guards positioned outside Rodriguez's office, she reported, and I'm detecting some kind of jamming device that would block all communications from that area. "David, if you had gone there, they would have made me disappear," he finished grimly. "Probably claimed it was an accident or that I had suffered some kind of breakdown from the stress of war. It gets worse," Kira said, her face growing pale as she continued monitoring the station's systems. "I'm picking up movement throughout the station. Security teams are being quietly repositioned. They're getting ready for something big." David began packing their few belongings into a travel bag. "Can you get us off the station?" "Maybe. There are several small transport ships in the docking bay. I could disable their tracking systems and override the launch controls. But David, once we run, there's no going back. We'll be fugitives from both our governments. Better than being dead." David replied, "Besides, someone has to warn people about what's coming. If we don't stop this conspiracy, both our civilizations will be destroyed." Kira stood up, and David could see her making a difficult decision. Using her abilities so openly would mean abandoning any pretense of being a normal, weak princess. Once she revealed her true power, there would be no hiding it again. "All right," she said finally, "but we'll need help. I can't do this alone." "What kind of help?" "I've been sensing something interesting about Princess Zara from House Moonblade. She's one of the other prizes, the warrior princess with the blue markings on her face. Her electromagnetic signature is different. I think she might be more than she appears to be too." David remembered Princess Zara. She had been standoffish during the selection ceremony, but he had noticed her watching everything with intelligent, calculating eyes. "You think she's like you?" "Not exactly, but I sense that she has abilities that most people don't know about, and more importantly, I don't think she's part of the conspiracy. Her brain pattern suggests she's been suspicious of the same people we're investigating." A soft chime from the door interrupted their conversation. David and Kira froze, looking at each other with wide eyes. "Captain Chen," came a voice from outside. It was Jake Morrison. "Sir, I need to speak with you. It's important." David grabbed a weapon from his military kit while Kira began reaching out with her abilities to scan Jake's intentions. After a moment, she nodded to David. Whatever Jake wanted. He wasn't planning to hurt them. "Come in," David called out. Jake entered their quarters and immediately noticed the packed bag and David's tense posture. "You know, don't you?" he said quietly. "Know what?" David asked, not lowering his weapon. "About the conspiracy." "About what Rodriguez and the others are planning." Jake's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank goodness. I was hoping you had figured it out. but I wasn't sure how to approach you without exposing myself. You're not part of it? David asked, though he kept his weapon ready. Hell no. I've been trying to gather evidence for weeks. But these people are smart. They only communicate through encrypted channels, and they're very careful about who they trust. Jake looked at Kira with new respect. But I'm guessing your princess here has abilities that make investigation a lot easier. Kira stood up slowly, the lines under her skin beginning to glow softly. How long have you known? About you specifically, just suspected until now. But I knew something was different about you from the moment Captain Chen made his choice. No offense, but you're clearly not as weak as everyone thinks. David lowered his weapon. If Jake was lying, Kira would sense it. So what do we do now? Now we find Princess Zera and anyone else we can trust, Jake said. Because in about 6 hours, when the cosmic storm reaches its peak in communications, with our home worlds are completely cut off, Rodriguez and his people are going to make their move. Outside their window, the first wisps of the cosmic storm were already visible. Like purple lightning dancing between the stars, time was running out, and their small group of allies would soon be all that stood between peace and total war. Finding Princess Zera turned out to be easier than expected. When David, Kira, and Jake reached the diplomatic quarters where the other Zephyrian princesses were staying, they discovered that Zera was already waiting for them. She stood in the shadows near a maintenance corridor, her distinctive blue facial markings seeming to glow in the dim light. Unlike the other princesses who wore elaborate gowns, Zera dressed in simple but practical clothing that allowed her to move freely. When she saw them approaching, she stepped forward with the confident stride of a trained warrior. Captain Chen, she said in accented but clear English, I was wondering when you would seek me out. Your choice of Princess Kira was either very foolish or very wise. I have been trying to determine which. David studied her carefully. And what conclusion did you reach? That depends on whether you chose her for her hidden abilities or simply because you felt sorry for her. Zera's piercing green eyes shifted to Kira, a sense that you are far more than you appear to be. Little sister, Kira stepped forward, and the dark lines under her skin began to pulse with soft light. You can sense electromagnetic fields too, can't you? Zera smiled for the first time since they had met her. Not quite the same way you do. My abilities are more physical. Watch. She placed her hand against the metal wall, and suddenly the entire section began to vibrate. David could feel the resonance in his bones, as Zera somehow manipulated the molecular structure of the metal itself. I can affect the electromagnetic bonds that hold matter together, Zera explained. It makes me very good at breaking things. When necessary, my people call it molecular disruption, but I prefer to think of it as controlled destruction. Jake whistled softly. No wonder they call you the warrior princess. My abilities are why House Moonblade has remained independent for so long, Zera continued. But they are also why I have been watching the political situation here very carefully. When people like Admiral Rodriguez and Princess Luna start making secret plans, it usually means they want to eliminate anyone who might threaten their power. So you know about the conspiracy? David asked. I suspected it from the beginning. Luna has always been ambitious, and she surrounds herself with people who share her hunger for control. When I saw her having private meetings with your admiral, I knew something was wrong. Kira suddenly grabbed David's arm, her eyes going wide with alarm. They're coming. Security teams are moving through the station. We need to hide, now. Zera immediately took charge. This way. I know a route through the maintenance tunnels that will take us to the lower levels. They followed her through a hidden panel that led to a network of service corridors, running throughout the station. As they moved through the narrow passages, David could hear the heavy footsteps of security teams searching the areas they had just left. How did you know about these tunnels? Jake asked Zera as they crawled through a particularly tight section. I make it my business to know every escape route wherever I go, she replied. Being a princess doesn't mean being helpless. They emerged in a storage area deep in the station's lower levels, surrounded by containers of supplies and equipment. It was here that Kira made a discovery that changed everything, as she reached out with her senses to check for any electronic surveillance. In the area, her abilities suddenly amplified dramatically. The cosmic storm outside was getting stronger, and its electromagnetic radiation was affecting her powers in ways none of them had expected. "Something's happening to me," Kira said, her voice filled with wonder and fear. "I can see everything. Every ship in the fleet, every communication device, every weapon system. It's like the storm is making me stronger." David watched in amazement as the lines under Kira's skin became brighter and more complex, spreading across her arms like a living circuit board. Her eyes began to glow with the same soft light, and the air around her shimmered with energy. "The storm isn't just electromagnetic radiation," she whispered, her voice sounding different. "More distant. It's like a massive network of energy that connects everything in space, and I can tap into it." But the increased power came with a terrible cost. David could see Kira struggling to maintain control, as vast amounts of information flooded her consciousness. She was seeing too much, feeling too much, and her human-like mind wasn't designed to process that level of input. "Kira, you need to pull back," David said urgently. "This is too dangerous. I can't," she replied, tears streaming down her face. "I can see the conspiracy now. It's bigger than we thought. Rodriguez and Luna have agents in both fleets, ready to attack the moment the storm reaches its peak. They're going to destroy the peace station and blame it on engine failure. From the electromagnetic interference through the overwhelming flood of information, Kira had discovered the final piece of their plan. The conspirators weren't just planning to restart the war. They were going to eliminate all the witnesses to their treachery right here on Harmony Station. "How long do we have?" Jake asked. Kira's glowing eyes focused on something only she could see. 2 hours, maybe less. The storm will reach maximum intensity, and that's when they'll strike. Zara placed a protective hand on Kira's shoulder. "Can you maintain control long enough to help us stop them?" "I don't know," Kira admitted. "The power is incredible, but it's like trying to drink from a waterfall. I feel like I'm drowning in electricity." David made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He knew that asking Kira to use her enhanced abilities would put her in terrible danger. But they were running out of time and options. "What do you need us to do?" he asked. "I can disable their communication systems and prevent them from coordinating the attack," Kira said, her voice becoming more strained with each word. "But someone needs to get to the main power core and manually override the security protocols. And someone else needs to warn the other ships in the fleet. I'll take the power core," Zara said immediately. "My abilities should allow me to break through any physical barriers they've put in place. I'll handle communications with the fleet." Jake added, "I still have access to some secure channels that Rodriguez doesn't know about." That left David with the most dangerous job of all, confronting the conspirators directly and trying to stop them before they could implement their backup plans. As they prepared to split up, the station suddenly shuttered around them. Through the small windows, they could see the cosmic storm intensifying, sending waves of purple and gold energy cascading across space like aurora in the night sky. "It's starting," Kira said, her entire body now glowing with the same ethereal light as the storm outside. "I can feel the electromagnetic field of the entire sector. It's beautiful and terrible at the same time." David took her hands, not caring that touching her sent small shocks of electricity through his body. "Promise me you won't lose yourself. And there, promise me you'll come back." Kira looked at him with eyes that held the light of stars. "I promise I'll try. But David, if something happens to me, if I can't control the power, you need to know something. My choice to help you wasn't just about preventing war. It was because you're the first person who ever saw me as more than a mistake or a threat. You saw me as someone worth saving." Before David could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, and automated voices announced that all personnel should report to emergency stations due to technical difficulties caused by the storm. "They're making their move," Jake said grimly. David squeezed Kira's glowing hands one last time. "Then it's time for us to make ours," as they split up to face what might be their final battle. None of them knew that in 2 hours, the fate of Two entire civilizations would depend on the choices made by a human soldier, a hidden princess, a warrior with molecular powers, and a loyal friend who refused to abandon his principles. The cosmic storm raged outside, but the real storm was just beginning inside Harmony Station. The cosmic storm was now so powerful that the entire station shook with each wave of energy that passed through it. David made his way through corridors filled with panicking crew members, all heading to emergency stations as ordered. But he was going in the opposite direction, toward the command center where he knew Admiral Rodriguez would be orchestrating his treacherous plan. Behind him, he could feel Kira's presence growing stronger and more distant at the same time. Through their connection, he sensed her consciousness expanding to touch every electronic system in the sector. She was becoming something beyond human or Zephyrian, a being of pure electromagnetic energy riding the waves of the cosmic storm. The command center's doors were sealed, but David had expected that. Using his military override codes, he managed to get inside just as Rodriguez was giving orders to his conspirators. Through a secure communication channel, the storm is at 70% intensity. Rodriguez was saying to someone on the screen, "Begin Phase 1. Make it look like system failures caused by electromagnetic interference." David stepped into the room with his weapon drawn. "I don't think so, Admiral." Rodriguez spun around, his face showing surprise that quickly turned to cold anger. "Captain Chen, I should have known you'd stick your nose where it doesn't belong. Your choice of that worthless princess should have told me you'd gone soft." "She's worth more than you'll ever understand," David replied, keeping his weapon trained on the Admiral. "Call off your attack. It's over," Rodriguez laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the command center. "Over, boy. You have no idea what you're dealing with. This conspiracy goes far beyond just me and Princess Luna. We have supporters in both governments, people who understand that eternal war is more profitable than temporary peace. You're willing to destroy millions of lives for profit. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to ensure humanity's survival," Rodriguez shot back. "These aliens can't be trusted. The moment they think they have the advantage, they'll turn on us. At least this way, we maintain control." Through the station's communication system, David could hear distant explosions. Somewhere else in the massive structure, Zara was fighting her way to the power core while Jake tried to warn the fleets. But time was running out. Suddenly, every screen in the command center flickered to life. Kira's face appeared on all of them simultaneously, but she looked different now. Her eyes glowed with the same energy as the cosmic storm, and her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Admiral Rodriguez," she said, her voice carrying an otherworldly authority, "I am giving you one chance to surrender. Call off your attack and submit to justice." Rodriguez stared at the screens in shock. "What are you? What kind of monster did we let onto this station?" "I am what happens when someone chooses love over hatred," Kira replied. "I am what grows when someone plants seeds of peace instead of war, and I am done hiding what I am." David felt the electromagnetic field around him intensify as Kira's power reached its peak. Through the station's windows, he could see the cosmic storm swirling in patterns that seemed almost alive, as if Kira was conducting a symphony of pure energy. But he could also sense the terrible cost. Each time Kira used more power, she became less like the gentle princess he had come to care for and more like a force of nature. He was losing her to the storm, and there might not be a way to bring her back. "Rodriguez," David said urgently, "even if you succeed here, she'll stop every ship in both fleets from firing a single shot. Your war is over before it begins." The Admiral's face twisted with rage. "Then I'll make sure she doesn't survive to interfere." He pulled out a hidden weapon and aimed it not at David, but at the station's main power coupling. "If I overload the power core, the electromagnetic feedback will destroy her consciousness along with everything else." David realized with horror that Rodriguez was willing to destroy the entire station and everyone on it just to eliminate Kira. Before he could stop him, the Admiral fired. The power coupling exploded in a shower of sparks, and immediately David felt Kira's anguish through their connection. The feedback was tearing through her expanded consciousness like acid, threatening to scatter her essence across the electromagnetic spectrum. But instead of retreating to save herself, Kira made a choice that would be remembered for generations. David watched through the windows as the cosmic storm suddenly changed direction, flowing not past the station but into it. Kira was pulling the storm's energy into herself, absorbing power that no living being was meant to contain. Her voice filled the command center one last time, but now it carried the weight of cosmic forces. I choose to become the bridge between worlds. I choose to protect what matters more than any single life. Kira, no. David shouted, but it was too late. The princess who had hidden her true nature for so long finally revealed the full extent of her power. The electromagnetic storm that surrounded the station didn't dissipate. It transformed into something new. Kira's consciousness expanded beyond her physical form, becoming one with the energy fields that connected all technology in the sector. Rodriguez fired his weapon again, but the shots simply passed through empty air. Kira was no longer a physical being that could be harmed by conventional weapons. Through every communication device in both fleets, her voice spoke with calm authority. All weapons systems in this sector are now under my protection. Any attempt to fire upon another ship will result in immediate system shutdown. This is not a threat. This is a promise. David felt tears streaming down his face as he realized what Kira had sacrificed. She had become something beyond mortality, a guardian presence that would ensure peace between their civilizations. But in doing so, she had given up everything that made her human. Rodriguez stared at the screens in defeat as reports came in. From both fleets, every weapons system had indeed shut down. Ships that tried to charge their guns found their power systems mysteriously failing. The war he had planned was now impossible to fight. You've doomed us all, Rodriguez said bitterly. No. David replied, finally understanding the true meaning of Kira's sacrifice. She saved us all. 6 months later, David stood in the memorial garden that had been built in Kira's honor. Representatives from both civilizations had contributed plants and trees from their homeworlds, creating a living symbol of the peace she had made possible. Children from both species played together among the glowing flowers, laughing and sharing toys as if the idea of their peoples being enemies was absurd. Above them, the electromagnetic field that Kira had become continued to protect the sector, ensuring that weapons of war could never again threaten the innocent. The memorial plaque bore words that David had written himself: Princess Kira of House Whisper. She taught us that true strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the courage to protect. She chose to become the light that guides us toward a better future. Sometimes, in the quiet moments when the electromagnetic fields around him hummed just a little differently, David could swear he felt her presence. A gentle reminder that love was stronger than hatred, that sacrifice could triumph over selfishness, and that sometimes the smallest, seemingly weakest person could change the entire universe. Rodriguez had been right about one thing: David's choice had shocked everyone, but not because it was foolish. It shocked them because it proved that even in the darkest times, there were still those who would choose hope over fear, peace over power, and love over everything else. The cosmic storm had passed, but its greatest gift remained: a guardian angel made of starlight and electromagnetic waves, watching over to civilizations as they learned to live together in the peace that one brave princess had died to create. And in that peace, both species discovered something they had almost lost forever: the possibility of a future where their children would never know the pain of war.